Can y'all hear me?
Yep. All right, that's Senechan.
Okay, that's good because I was testing my mic earlier and it was not doing anything, so that's good to know. All right, give me a hot moment to share. Excuse me, share my screen here. Okay, that looks all right.
You're good. It's all yours.
Alrighty. In that case, first off, thank Willie for the previous talk on publishing. Um, yes, no, I definitely missed out on an opportunity to publish a wonderful game by Shiba Inu, so that's on me. But yeah, so everyone, welcome to Publishing with Sekai Project, the Abridged edition. My name is Chris, and I will be today's presenter. So the purpose of this talk is to give a bit of a crash course on what it is that we do as a publisher, as well as offer some guidance for developers out there who are looking for a publisher to work with. I'll talk about things to look out for, certain pitfalls to keep in mind, but keep in mind, of course, that these are personal opinions and that your mileage is going to vary greatly depending on one, if you actually want to look for a publisher, two, what it is that you know your game you're pitching, and a lot of other factors. So definitely keep that in mind as I go through this. And of course, this is my first time doing a talk for VN Conference, so expect a lot of stumbling, mumbling, and bumbling going on. I don't know how I rhymed all three of those at the same time. That was not scripted, so please be gentle. And of course, disclaimer, because technically I have to do this, the views expressed in this presentation do not reflect the opinions of Sekai Project Incorporated. I have to do this, otherwise I'm sure my lawyer's going to yell at me on Monday about why I did not have a disclaimer. I mean, look, our mascot Senna, she is not pleased with me already. She looks very upset, so you don't want to make her upset. So, a little quick thing about me. So, yes, I am the co-founder and current CEO of Sekai Project. And for those of you who have unfortunately known me even longer, I am the former co-founder of Hendane. If you do not know what Hendane is, there is a very certain, very well done YouTube video about this phenomenon from the 2000s known as the Yaoi paddle. If you're familiar with that or you watched the video, then you know what Hendane is all about. But basically, I was an AnimeCon vendor in the US, North America, and Europe for almost a decade. That's what I did before Sekai Project. And I also spent a few years as a freelance translator, translating games from Japanese to English. Yeah, yeah. I apologize if you've ever had to deal with those pals. I'm sorry. It was a dumb idea, but unfortunately not the topic of today's discussion. Um, no comment. That's what I'm gonna go with. And of course, lastly, I think polar bears are rather neat because we all know Ice Bear is truly the coolest bear. That's the truth, y'all. So, Sekai Project at a glance. During our 8-year history, we've worked with nearly 100 developers and publishers all across the world. We've published over 300 games, DLC, books across a variety of platforms. Though we started out focusing on visual novels, we've also branched out to platformers, RPGs, and all sorts of other types of games and media. We did manga for a very brief period of time. That was a really dumb idea. I'll into that another time. But yeah, from everything from PC to Nintendo Switch to even Bookwalker for a lot of our book publishing, we've kind of done it all. So yeah, we've been stumbling around for a while. Hopefully, we've figured out how to stop stumbling and actually start walking for once. So a little bit about who we work with. So as you imagine, the majority of the people that we work with are based in Japan, a lot of the major developers and third party publishers. But we also do work with a number of indie developers of all levels, from people kind of working solo to small independent companies. And as of today, we are currently working with developers across 13 countries. So I guess we're kind of living up to our name, Sekai Project being very worldly in a sense. And honestly, I think since our foundation to today, given a lot of what's been available in terms of free tools, like of course RenPy among other things, that it's fantastic. There's almost feels like there's never been a better time to be a game developer, and it's very heartening to see so many people deciding, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a game developer. I'm going to make VNs. And I'm like, you know what? That is fantastic. That's the kind of thing that we should see, and I'm really happy to see it, especially a lot of the great discussions we've been having today so far. So let's talk a little bit about what we do for the publishers or the developers, excuse me. Just misspoke there. So the majority of the work that we do, so this is where I guess a lot of the bread and butter of this discussion might not necessarily be for everybody is a lot of what we do, the main part of our job is localization. So majority of the stuff we handle is in Japanese. So we do translation into English, Chinese, or Japanese if it's like another language in Japanese. But Japanese English is kind of our main thing. We also offer full QA support. So basically, once you have a build to us, we look at it top to bottom, checking for grammar mistakes, game breaking bugs. We send reports all the time to make sure that when your game goes out the door, that is in its hopefully its best state possible. We also do offer some limited programming support depending on the scope of debugging and the game engine. One thing that you all might find kind of strange is a lot of the times when we work with Japanese developers, they are very, very protective of their source code. So when we say, hey, we can, fix your game really quickly, they're like, no, you will send us the reports. We will fix it and send it back to you. And then we'll see that nothing was fixed. And, they could have just sent us a source. We could have tinkered with it, but I respect anybody that however they want to do the business. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, no, we do offer some level of programming support, especially when it comes to RenPy and Unity. We also do a lot of support for graphics related stuff. So if you're going to be publishing on Steam, as you will know, there is a lot of stuff beyond just submitting your game. You've got to have capsule images, basically all the little doodads and header images you see on the Steam store page. We help with making trading card assets, achievement assets. In the case of non-English developers, because of course we cater to an English market, we also do localized logo design, among other things. So a lot of stuff. We try to cover all the bases to make um, your work as easy as possible. Um, yeah, those Steam badges. Yeah, that's not fun. That's definitely a chore, especially when they tell you that this failed because it was touching the borders. You can't touch the borders. It's not fading to black. You need to be exactly doing that. Valve is very particular about these things. But to continue on, one of the big things we do also is we offer developing funding options such as grants or royalty advances. So that's definitely something that we do try to offer to, again, make the work for the developer as simple as possible. And last, of course, a lot of administrative matters. I think Quilly touched on a few of those before, which is basically things like ESRB ratings, or in this case, since we also deal with stuff in Europe, PEGI ratings, uh, and of course, for Japan, SARA ratings. So, we do a lot of that stuff, a lot of the legal paperwork, and of course, a lot of aspects of marketing. So, one-stop shop. That is basically our business. That's the way we do things. So, what do we look for in a developer? So, this is a very, very general point. So, this is not specific like, hey, I need characters, games with these kind of characters. No. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Here, I'm just talking about exactly if you're going to hit us up, what exactly are we expecting from you? So, it's very simple. Three things: a concise GDD, as we call the game design document, and a game pitch that explains game concepts and the development roadmap. So we want to know that if you don't have a fully formed game, that's all right. It's not necessarily expected, but we want to know that you are serious about what you're doing and you're going to prove that to us. And that's very important. Put your best foot forward. I think it's a good thing for everybody. Next, if you have it, again, it's not necessary, but if you do have it, a game demo or trailer, again, something that really showcases what it is that you're trying to propose to us. I think that's going to be very useful. And if nothing else, it convinces us that again, you guys are serious, and you want to make this happen. And lastly, a clearly stated reason as to why you want to work with us. Again, uh, I think Quilly touched on it earlier, and it makes a lot of sense. Despite me kind of nervously laughing in the Discord chat, but it is the truth that when you look for a publisher, if you look to work for us, you need to look at and say, why do you want to work with Sekai Project? Why do you want to work with any other publisher? Does it look like a good fit? Does it make sense? If you're just spitballing, I mean, there's no harm in doing that, but don't be surprised if you get a rejection because, well, you just, it just did not mesh. It happens, and I'll go over a lot of details as to why we may reject your game. But before that, let's talk about the game pitch. Bottom line, tell us about your game. That's what we want to know. The best definition of a game pitch, a concise description of your game that also shows how it caters to a specific audience. So, in easier terms, it's basically tell me about your game and why people should care about it. And that is the absolute truth. I mean, you will see many examples of people with great ideas, fantastic ideas, that unfortunately you can't figure out how to monetize or turn into a business. And unfortunately, what you have is simply an idea. There's nothing wrong with that, but as a business, as a publisher, we need to see that what you have is something that's going to sell. It sounds kind of cut and dry, it's nothing happy rainbows, anything like that, but it's the truth. I mean, if you're going to be pitching to a publisher, be sure that you show them that there's a reason they need to pick it up and that there is a monetary value in that. Now, the game picture doesn't have to be fancy. It could, the email you send us or the support ticket, that is your pitch. I don't expect you to send me a PowerPoint. That is the pitch, because you should be saving that for your GDD that you'll hopefully send us as well. Just make sure that you tell us about yourself, tell us about your game, tell us why you want to work with us. Because if you don't tell us anything, you just send us a bunch of a bunch of assets. We're not gonna look at your concept. I mean, we need to know, why are you contacting us. Be very precise about these things. And again, the thing with the fit, as this was talked about before, about the Sekai Project brand. As a lot of people would see, that Sekai Project, we publish a lot of games that has a very Japanese flavor, your anime-esque characters and that sort of thing, which, I mean, that is what people expect from us, whether it's a good thing or not. And so you need to basically look at what you're doing and look at, what we have to offer. And again, you got to do your research. You got to see that what you're offering us makes sense. Like, we will try to branch out, and we have in the past, but I'll go over that a little bit later also as to why that may or may not work. So I mean, it's definitely something to keep in mind. Other things you can attach to your game pitch to kind of really highlight what your game's about is the key visual. Now, this term is it's an illustration it's basically encapsulates what your game is all about. And again, it sounds really shallow. I hate to put it this way, but think about the old school. I can't believe I'm saying it's old school. I mean, GameStop, these places still exist, but think about going into a video game store, and what catches your eye first? I don't think it's necessarily the text. It's probably something on the box. And that's still the truth. Even in the digital age, you need to have something that captures the attention of the user. I mean, that's I think something that still does not change. I would rather see it change, but it's just I think it's a psychology thing that basically, whatever your eye catches, that's what's going to draw you in. And lastly, talk about your release date. If you're already in progress, like let's hear, you're like, hey, I'm nearly done. It's gonna be out by the end of the year, next year. You know, let us know exactly when you think it's gonna be happening. This is very important, and is also another thing I will go over a little bit later. But let's talk about those GDDs, the game design document, aka the blueprints. So, a GDD, a highly detailed document that describes everything in your game. I mean, this is from the game concept, story outline, your character artwork, user interface, the whole 9 yards, to everything. This is what your GDD encapsulates. So, you have one of these. It's I think is very important. It shows a publisher, especially us, that you are very, very truly serious in what you want to do. And I think that's an important detail, especially trying to make a pitch. Again, one of the things that's very important is to talk about the development timeline. You need to be realistic about this because, I mean, let's be honest here. Like, delays are going to happen. It is expected. I mean, especially considering the circumstances we live in right now with COVID-19, the pandemic, and all that, among other things. It's deadlines change, timelines change. It's perfectly understandable. But again, just keep your publisher informed. If you got to change stuff, fantastic, not a problem. Keeping everybody informed, keeping that communication going, that is a very, very important thing. But again, try to be realistic about what your development timelines look like. And of course, realistic milestones, kind of the same thing with the development and funding requirements. I know there's been talk about, again, finding people, especially like voice acting, especially on a budget. I understand that. That's just sometimes money is a tricky thing. But for us, unfortunately, as a publisher, if we see in your budget that a lot of what you're trying to do is basically you've got people working for free or profit share or just really questionable amounts of money, that is a red flag for us because so here, okay, I mean, the reason is at the end of the day, for a publisher, it doesn't really matter how you came about to put your game together. You did it, fantastic. Pat yourself on the back. You made it happen. Not many people can take a concept from start to finish. The problem is what we worry about is that when you have people working for free or under other guises besides money, is how motivated will they stay? And look, if they stay motivated, dude, you got some fantastic people, but make sure you pay your people. That's important. But if you get people motivated, fantastic. But you'll see that people will stop being motivated if there's not enough incentive. And this is a long grind. This is no easy cakewalk. Unless you are into the grind, then you know what? My hat's off to you. That's dedication. But it is a thing that you have to be concerned about because at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a free lunch. That is a truth that you should always keep in mind, no matter what you do, whether it's game development or anything else. And with your GDD, I mean, yes, the details are important, but you do not need, when you contact us, you do not need to go overboard. GDDs are what they call a living document. It's supposed to evolve. It's supposed to change as your game develops and everything else. But again, we just want you to show us that you're doing stuff. Like you're doing the needful. You're trying to make something happen. And as long as you show us that, that's fine. You don't need to have every single detail because at the end of the day, I'm not here to read a 20-page synopsis of the story of your game. You can save that for later. But let's talk about funding because I think that is a bit of a topic that actually a lot of developers that hit us up talk about. So, Sekai Project has funded over 50 titles via crowdfunding, as well as 275,000 US dollars in direct funding, grants, and royalty advances. So, ultimately, along with what we said about what we do for developers, is we do not want to make developers indebted to us if they want to work with us. So again, if you don't have a game that's complete, but you tell us, hey, I've got this great concept, but I need X amount to get these character sprites done or to get some music and things like that, we'll work with you. We'll come up with financial plans that basically either cost you nothing at the end of the day, or it comes in the form of a reduced royalty until those funds are recouped. And in a lot of cases, we don't even take that. We'll just say, you know what, well, just forgive the toll because it's fine. There are merits. So this is a lot of the stuff that we also do, though we don't really talk about a lot when it comes to funding and all that. And so while the great majority of our titles do come to market, there are unfortunately a number of cases where developers don't deliver. In fact, they disappear on us or they end up misusing funds. There is a very notable Kickstarter campaign. You can probably look it up because we don't have that. We have a lot of projects, but I'm not going to name names right now, where we found out afterwards that they took all the development money we gave them and they totally like ran off with it to do something that had nothing to do with the game development, and we were very, very disappointed. And that's why we always tell people if you're going to hit us up about publishing and involves money, please be very clear with what you're doing with those funds. Because of these situations, we're unfortunately more hesitant in offering funding for projects. But I mean, it's case by case. If you've got a compelling case and we like what you have, then we're more than happy to work with you. Though please note, we are not going to entertain any crowdfunding requests until at least 2022, probably beyond. If you followed any of the stuff we've done, we're extremely behind on a lot of crowdfunding campaigns and fulfillment. And something that if I ever do another VN conference talk, is what I would like to talk about. Just crowdfunding is basically stuff like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, all these sort of crowdfunding sites. I think they're fantastic. I think they do what they're supposed to do. But the thing is, you're going to run into more problems going the crowdfunding route if you're not sure exactly what it is you need. So I'll say that for another time. Also, wow, it's been 14 minutes. I need to move quickly. So, after contracts are signed, what do we expect from you? Regular updates. I think that's very important. It don't have to be monthly, bi-monthly. It just keep the communication lines open. If we don't know what's going on, then nothing happens. It's very important that you keep communicating with us because we're not here to basically take over your life and say like, I don't think you should develop it this way. You should do X, Y, and Z. No, no, no. We try to be as hands off as possible, but we need you to tell us what's going on because again, if delays happen, keep your publisher informed of your progress because we understand the struggle. We know that it's not easy. So just let us know. We're not going to be angry about it. Just communication. That's all I'm emphasizing. Another thing I want to mention though is feature creep. Feature creep is a bad thing. Do not be tempted by feature creep. It happens. I get it. You see some newfangled plugin or something else, people doing different things, and you're like, yo, I am going to do live 2D now. And you're like, well, do you know how to do that stuff? And you say, do that. And then you're going to change your UI. You're going to be, adding so much stuff that suddenly you have lost focus on what it is that you were supposed to have been doing before, and game development feels further and further away. That's why I say stay focused. We are not here to hear about you asking us for money for another game when I asked you to work on a first one. Don't tell us about game 2, game 3. Like, I understand this is a long slog. You're going to get tired of what you're doing. You're going to come in, wide-eyed bushy tail. You're like, I'm going to make games. It's going to be fantastic. And midway through, you're going to be like, no, I'm not. I'm going to make another one. And that becomes a third and a fourth and a fifth and so forth. This is stuff that has actually happened before. Try to stay focused. It's very, very important. It's also a very bad look to your publisher if you are not delivering on what you contractually said you were going to deliver on. Just something to keep in mind. But what happens if your game pitch or GDD is rejected? I think this is kind of the meat of the discussion here. 4 key points that I look at anytime we do unfortunately have to reject your proposal. Keep in mind that a lot of the licensing work does go through me. It's usually by group consensus, but at the end of the day, I kind of give the final word. So this is stuff I look at. So again, could be different for other people, but for me, this is what I look at. It could be the key visual doesn't catch the eye. It doesn't stand out against the competition. Your game just doesn't seem to fit the brand, or again, unrealistic expectations or funding estimates. I mean, well, we're going to go into detail with that. So let's talk about the artwork. So your key visual is supposed to draw your audience in. So if it doesn't, why do they care? And that's very important. Now, your key visual, it doesn't have to be fancy, beautiful artwork. If it is, cool. That's great. It could be anything. Look, if you've got like stick figures and I'm drawn by these stick figures, what does this have to do with anything? Then you know what? Your key visual is pretty good. So it's very important that whatever you decide to present, it makes sense. Also, another important thing is for a lot of VN developers, it's not always the case that the artist is the same across everything from your key visual, your character sprites, your event graphics, your UI, and so forth, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with that, but try to keep it consistent because we've seen cases where it's very obvious that you show me a beautiful key visual and the rest of it does not look like what it was supposed to be. And I know you're not trying to do it, anybody's trying to do it deliberately, but you have to avoid the bait and switch. It's a very bad look. Or you have character sprites which are supposed to be the same height, yet on the same plane of existence, they are not the same height. This is a thing that we saw recently. I'm like, please make sure your character sprites are the right size, in the situation they're supposed to be. So consistency is very, very important. What makes your visual novel or game stand out? 80 to 90% of visual novels that come out of Japan basically are takes place in a school. May not be a romantic comedy or not, but it takes place in a school. That's a thing. People miss those days, I guess. And, there are a lot of these on the market. We need to know what it is that makes yours stand out. So, I mean, if you're going to make another romantic school comic, fantastic. Explain to me why I should care, because there are a lot of them out there. So it's unfortunately, as I think it was been mentioned by a lot of people, you need to be your biggest proponent for your game. If you cannot prove why your game needs to get its shine, then I mean, we got a situation. Next up, the Sekai Project brand. If it's not a VN, why should we consider it? And again, we have done non-VN games, but you need to look at the fit. And I think this is also important because we've worked with developers who are not doing non-Japanese, non-anime-esque titles, and I hate to say it, I don't think we've delivered. I don't think they've sold well. I don't think we've done enough for it, and it could just be the fact that it's not in our wheelhouse. So there are a lot of cases where we reject perfectly good games. We've rejected a lot of very beautiful looking games. It does not fit our brand because it's just not what we do. And in a lot of those cases, I say, you know what? Maybe you want to go solo. Maybe you want to work with somebody else, like Rado Leica Games. More power to them if they see something that we don't see. And I think that's something to consider. So if we reject you, don't feel bad about it. It could just be that it's not the right kind of thing. And don't pitch us smartphone games. This keeps happening for some reason. We don't do smartphone games. We don't do gacha games. Where do your research. I don't know where these people come from. That's actually really strange. And of course, expectations. You know, if your schedule does not make sense, then we don't know what to do because it starts to look a little bit worrisome. If you're telling me, yo man, I got this game concept, 2 months, gonna be live 2D, 80 hours, 10 routes, and it's gonna be fully voiced, and I'm saying, but you haven't started yet, and you're telling me you can do it. I mean, if you can, fantastic. I would rather be wrong, but if your schedules are not realistic, we look at that as very suspect and we don't think it's going to deliver on time or deliver at all. So that's something to consider. And also the funding goals, again, if it's too low, again, you're saying like, yo, man, I'm going to get my game voice. It's going to be $50 and a bag of Doritos. And I'd say those Doritos better taste good because I don't know how you're going to get it done. If you get it done, again, fantastic. But it's the worry that, you're not going to get what you want because it's not enough an incentive. So again, pay the people you work with. It's very important, especially working with a publisher. And lastly, do not ask for money for games that we did not talk about. I don't know why I have to keep emphasizing it, but it keeps happening. Stay focused. It's very, very important to stay focused. And that's about wraps up. So in conclusion, bring your A game. So again, be the biggest cheerleader for your game. If you think your game has what it takes to work with us or anybody else, let us know. Like, leave it all out on the table, and we will see what you got. I mean, be proud of what you have, and just be ready to show it off. And I think it's very important. But of course, be realistic. Game development is a very long road. You'll never know what happens, but be prepared, be disciplined, and just keep in mind, just got to stay, of what to expect, and be focused, because as a publisher, we are very, very forgiving of realistic delays and everything else. But I can't say the same for other publishers, and it's not a good look if you stop development, you disappear, or you end up doing something else. And again, avoid feature creep or else development drag on. It's the truth. Feature creep is the creep you do not want to deal with. So, having gone over time, thank you very much for watching. I apologize how rambly it is. I honestly was looking at my notes and then I gave up looking at it because I realized the text was too small. I hope this was informative and that you came away with some sort of knowledge of what it's like to work with a publisher like us or anybody else. So, with that said, that's about it. Enjoy the rest of VN Conference.
Yay.
And complaints to the store manager goes here.
All right, so I'm going to just slide in one question. Someone asked, does the Sekai Project browse around online communities and social media looking for interesting projects?
Yes, we've actually been doing that since our foundation. Because of our considerable backlog and a lot of the titles that we receive out of our Tokyo office, we've been doing a little bit less of that. But no, on both of all of my social media accounts, I'm always on the lookout to see if there's anything interesting, and if it strikes our fancy, we'll reach out.
Cool. All right, so since we're over time, just hit Chris up in the Discord chat, and Miko, I believe you are up.
Yes, I'm getting my thing up.
Cool. You can start off whenever you're ready.
Yay! see how I want to do this. Alright, share screen. Let's hope that's it. Can you see it?
It is. I have a black screen, but it might just be loading.